Set.
All right. Well, good afternoon. It's nice to see everyone today, or some of you I can see. Some of you, it's a blank screen. So turn on your video if you will, please. I think we'll just start out with a little tune first to get us in the musical mode. And here we go. Don't forget.
Wow.
right,
Good
Joanie.
job. Good job. Very good. Wow.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, today I'm going to explore a topic that doesn't get spoken about very often, perhaps because many of us take it for granted, but I don't, because it's part of the nature of the way I play. But I'd like to talk about bass, first of all, and establish what that is. Because if you have no musical experience, which a lot of people who come into this hobby don't, then you may not really even understand what the bass is and how it operates. So we have a chord, which is 3 notes, even though we only have to play 1. And then with the chord is a bass note. And the bass note is the bottom. So if you don't have a bass, then you don't hear the bottom. And the bass is very essential. And this applies to people who have built-in bass. Actually, everybody has a built-in bass that you can use. It's also changeable, and we'll talk about how to do that today. And then you also have bass pedals. Most people don't utilize it, but they're there. And we're going to find out today they can do a lot of other things. But the bass is really the foundation when you play. It's actually keeps the beat more than the drummer. And the bass moves all the time. You may not hear it because you're paying attention to everything else that you're doing. But the bass is really the carrier that's very, very important. There are 4 elements that make up a song or a piece of music. The first element is the most obvious. Anybody want to shout out what that would be? Come on, you know.
The melody.
The melody. Excellent. Yes, the melody. Then we have the accompaniment. That's all the background stuff that goes along and makes us sound great, right? Then we have the drums. That's keeping time, so to speak, keeping the beat. And then the 4th element, or 3rd, if out of order, however you want to view it, but most important is the bass. It's the automatic bass, if you will, meaning it's going to be played along. The correct bass is played when you touch your easy play chord. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my easy button, and I'm going to turn off everything except the bass. First, I'm going to give it all to you, and then I'm going to turn off all the sounds, so all you hear is the bass. So here we go. Let's get rid of that first. Oh. Okay. Can you hear that chord? Now, when I take away the sounds of the chord, all you're now going to hear is the bass. An interesting thing about bass sounds, and this is just a little tidbit of information for fun, is that men, as you're hearing ages, shall we say, men have difficulty hearing the real high sounds, high pitches. As women age, they lose the bass sounds, which is kind of interesting. If there's two people in your household playing, I'm sure you would adjust your volumes totally differently, especially if it's a man and a woman living in the household. You'll find that one hears certain things better than others. One turns something up, one turns something down. So that's what the bass is comprised of. And typically, the bass is going to be an upright bass. That's what comes on. It's an upright bass is that the person stands up behind it and they play the bass, and it looks like a giant fiddle. That was Joe's analogy. I said, how do you describe that? He said, it looks like a giant fiddle. So that gives you a picture of the bass. And I'm going to show you now what we get when we get certain rhythms. And I'm going to go into my keypad right now and find the rhythm I want by using my alpha pad. And I'll talk about that in just a little bit. And I want you to hear this. This is if you have pianist or guitarist styles or performers, so to speak, you are not going to have the drums on, but you will have a bass. So here's an example. And in that case, the bass was a type of upright bass that was being played. You'll notice that there were no drums, but that bass was kind of walking along, so you could really hear a beat even though we didn't have a drummer on. Here's an example with someone. So that's just a steady, but it is a beat, and it helps us to go along and hear that bass and find the first beat. So why I talk about that is because a lot of times when I've asked people, do you understand what bass is? And they really don't, and that's of no fault of your own. You first have to understand the elements in music. So I want to talk about, why do we need pedals? Anybody want to take a guess? Why do we need pedals?
To rest your feet.
To rest your feet, did you say? That's a good analogy.
To produce the bass?
We don't need pedals is number one, the answer. If you're familiar with the easy line of Lowrey, the easy 1, 2, 3, 4, SD Discovery 3, SD Freedom 3, the bass there is built in. So you don't have bass, you don't have a button, you don't have to do anything, but the computer knows to put the proper bass note when you press the one finger chord that you're going to play. It chooses also the type of bass it's going to be. So on one style of music you put on, you might hear a tuba in the bass. On another one, you might hear a honky-tonk piano. And all the bass sounds, if you have that type of model, they are changeable. And I will tell you a little bit about how to do that today as well. So it's not necessary for us to have pedals, because in the easy line starting out, the bass is already built in. But there's advantages to having played pedals. And the reason I opened up with Cherokee, which had a very busy bass line, and I assume you were watching my feet, is because the 99.5% of people do not play the pedals. So please don't let me hear you say, oh, I wish I could play those pedals, because you don't want to wish that on yourself at all. I think it's incredibly wonderful that what it took me years to know how to do, you can do with one button. So I wouldn't worry about wanting to learn the pedals. It's pretty tedious and it takes a lot of practice. And there's no reason, because in a lot of cases, we have more than one bass. I'll talk about the automatic bass 1 and bass 2, and on many of the instruments, and many times that bass line that's being played automatically is better than the majority of the people who would even play their own pedals. I got really interested I was a piano player in the beginning, and I worked for a dinner theater in my first years of college, playing shows, Broadway type shows. And we had a bass player who was also a young kid in college. And he was a terrible bass player. He made mistakes all the time. And for whatever reason, my ear could hear every time he played a wrong bass note. And the bass, like I said, is the bottom of the orchestra playing. So if the bass player's off, you can really notice it. And for me, it stuck out in my brain, not realizing that 3 or 4 years later, I would start with the Lowrey Organ Company and start to play and look at those pedals. My mom was a church organist, so I had seen her play them, but I never played them. And then I thought, well, if they're down there, I kind of would like to play them, because I'd like to be able to say I play pedals and I practice a lot to not make a bass mistake, because if the bass is off, you can really hear it. So I'm not encouraging anybody to learn the pedals, but I am encouraging you to understand why it's okay. The benefit when we don't have pedals on the smaller instruments, the benefit for you is that bass is built in and it's going to be superb and it's going to be perfect every time you play. If we do have pedals, we have a different type of advantage. So the first one that came along on the Easy 10, we have the option of, on the pedals, putting what we call function. And I don't really like that word. It's the only word I've come up with, and it's what's in the manuals. But I don't prefer the word function, because when I hear the word function, it makes me think about what's being defined, and I'm not really always sure I understand that. So, but I'm going to tell you a description of function. Means it's something that can be done. And on the Easy 10, the first thing that can happen is you can have glide and sustain on a pedal. Now, that may not sound important to you, but if you recall back to your music, you know that Tommy Dorsey really didn't play his instrument without the slide, right? The trombone, he used to use the slide. Well, in our interpretation, the word is glide. And so if you're playing Hawaiian music, or you're playing big band type music, playing a clarinet, a saxophone, trumpet, trombone, they all need the glide. And unfortunately, we suffer from switchitis, I guess you could call it, because we have the foot switch, on the right. If you touch the foot switch in your expression pedal, it activates the fill, or FX, yours might be called. And if you touch the left, it's the glide and sustain, depending on which instrument you have on. And most people struggle with that, because when they pick up their foot or they move their foot to try to kick it, their foot comes down on their toes and you blast your volume, or it comes down on your heel and now you have no volume. And for years and years, people really struggled with the foot switches. It was a nice function for us, but it was difficult for the hobbyists to become accustomed to that. Once the Easy 10 came and we could put the glide or the sustain on the pedals, now your foot naturally touches the pedals anyway. So every time you touch a pedal, you would get the glide. Now, how I equate that as an educator on your behalf is that your music is going to sound more authentic from an Easy 10 on, just because you're going to use the glide more, because all you have to do is step on any pedal and you'll get the glide. And that's a very important thing to make your music be authentic, especially, you know, the first type of music we think of is Hawaiian music, and we have to hear the glide there. So being able to use the pedals for a function like the glide became much more important. And I think I should stop here right now and ask if you have questions, because I gave a lot of information about bass and bass sounds and what the bass is and how it works. So I would imagine you might have some questions about that. So can we just pause here and get some questions?
Joanie, Barbara Allen here. Would you mind once more going over how you started when you got just the bass, so you can hear just the bass?
When I use a pianist or guitarist rhythm style, meaning that's the performer on the Easies, it's pianist and guitarist rhythm styles on the mid to larger instruments. So when a pianist style is on, or when a guitarist style is on, there is no drummer on, and you will hear just the bass and a piano or guitar background. But that bass is what's supporting. The piano and the guitarist background is what's strumming, if you will, the chord. But the bass is carrying the whole chord, and that's automatically there for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Inez has a question. Go ahead.
Okay. I have a question. When you set it up that way, where you put the pedal, you know, you use the pedal to do the glide or whatever you want to use it for, can you lock that in? Because once you turn the organ off, then everything is gone.
That's correct. And we're going to talk about how to do that and how to apply it
Okay.
in just a few minutes. And Inez, you own a symphony, don't you?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll be talking specifically to you and others that have those available features. So
Okay.
stay tuned.
Yep.
The short answer for you is you can only lock it while the instrument is on.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
What's that lock called on the instrument? The controller lock?
The controller, yeah, but that's a whole nother workshop.
Yeah.
Another question?
Guess we're all good.
Okay. So when we get to the fanfare, that was a technology shift completely. I remember showing the fanfare for the first time in the country, and I showed it to Fletcher Music when I worked for Lowrey. And it has a lot of what we call functions that can be put on the pedals. The most adorable function that everybody absolutely loves about the fanfare is that the fill, or FX if you will, can now be put on the pedals. So you step on any pedal and there goes, and your fill or your FX button will light up because you're actually applying the fill by the way of using your foot on any pedal. We no longer have to use those switches on the inside of the expression pedal, which was just such a happy day for so many people. Now, the advantage to me with my experience, and you may not realize this, but if indeed in the ensuing days and weeks you start to apply some of this stuff, what you're going to find is you will use your fill much better and much more accurate than you use it when you use a foot switch or a button. The reason for that is when you put your foot down on a pedal, your foot is not inclined to just touch the pedal and let go like a hot potato. When most people do the fill or the glide, they kick it and get right off. So when we're applying the fill, if we go ahead and we touch the switch, let's say you're on beat 3 of a measure, you're only going to hear beat 4 of the fill. But what I found in teaching people is when you're using the fill on your foot's going to stay on it a little longer. So you're going to get more of the value of the fill because we're going to hear more of it. Maybe we'll hear 4 beats. Maybe you'll take a little measure, and I'm going to play you a couple of examples in a moment. You'll take a little bit longer to hear the fill. So it's actually, in the last few years, I believe, has been utilized in a much better way than just kicking the switch and getting off of it. So that was revolutionary for the on the pedals as far as the EY300, the fanfare showed. The pedal sounds are chosen, they're chosen from Lowrey, of course, but the sounds are chosen according to the rhythm style and according to Bill Curry, who happened to program them. And Bill does a lot of electric bass sounds. And that's not really my preference, because I feel that when we can change all the sounds that are in your instrument can be applied to pedal. And the button actually says, on the newer instruments, it says pedal sounds. And on the previous generation of instruments, it said pedal genius. And I could ask 9 out of 10 people, do you ever use that? It's actually a tab, not a button. Do you ever use that tab? And they'll go, oh, no, I don't play pedals. Well, it has nothing to do with playing pedals. It has to do with the sound that's going to come out of the automatic bass. So you can actually scroll and get a different sound. So if I'm going to play honky tonk, maybe Alley Cat or 5'2", whatever it is, I probably want to hear a honky tonk in the bass. I don't want to hear an electric bass. If I'm playing a march, probably want to hear a tuba in the bass. Well, by touching that feature, you have the ability to change that sound. You don't have to play the pedals ever, but that sound will come out in the automatic bass. So that's a flexibility that I think a lot of people are not aware of. You can make it anything you want. When I do Fiddler on the Roof music, I like to put a big string ensemble in my bass. So that goes along with the sounds that I'm using. So I try to coordinate it, and also it gives a little bit more of a variety. It was interesting, Joe was sharing with me that Oscar Peterson, if he was choosing between having a drummer or a bass player, he chose to have the bass player. He didn't rely on a drummer ever. He felt like he didn't need that. As long as he had that bass player going along with him, he was a happy guy. And we know what wonderful music that he shares with us. So that's how important the bass is, that I feel. So I'm just going to pause once again, because I've said a lot, and see if you have any questions before we go into the next section.
Millie has a question. Go ahead, Millie.
Millie, you're muted. I can't hear you, hon.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, can you go through one more time how to change the sounds of the bass to a honky tonker?
What instrument do you have?
I have a marquee.
Okay, so you go to pedal sounds. In your case, I believe it's a button, not a tab. Over here I'm on a Prestige Plus right now. It's a tab, but it's black. I believe it's a button, and it says pedal sounds. You touch the pedal sounds, and in your screen will come up what sound it is. And as long as it's highlighted, you highlight it, you scroll, and you'll scroll through every sound that's in your marquee instrument, and you can make it anything you want. Once you get to the sound you want, you stop, and now the automatic bass is going to be that sound.
Great, thank you.
Good question. Good question. Something else? And I chose this topic actually for two specific reasons. One is because we tend to want to concentrate on the level of playing that we're at. And this is something that has nothing to do with your playing skills whatsoever. This is something that's operational, that as long as you know how to get a great sound, it's going to be a great sound. And when we're playing easy play chords, the bass player never, ever, ever makes a mistake unless you play the wrong chord. Other than that, it's always perfect. And that's what we want. And so that's good. It's great for beginners to know that, brand new beginners, sort of beginners, intermediate players, and then advanced players as well. The bass, that's something that's going to make us sound better, but we don't have to run down and dance and do what I call pedal aerobics. You don't have to do that. How's that? Okay, some
We
questions?
got a few questions. Go ahead, Gail, you can go first.
Okay, hi, Joanie.
Hi, Gail.
On the aria, there's auto bass 1 and 2. What you were just describing, changing the sound on the bass, how does that affect the aria? What would I be doing?
You're not going to change auto bass 1 or 2. Whichever auto bass is on, 1 or 2, it's on. When you go to your button that says pedal sounds, you then are scrolling for a sound you want. Once you arrive at that sound, if auto bass 1 is lit up, then that sound is going into auto bass 1. If auto bass 2 is set up, then automatically the sound is going to auto bass 2.
And where is that button on the aria?
On the far left-hand side, just above the,
Yeah, it's one of the tabs on that one.
it's a tab on that,
Yep. It's an orange tab on the left side.
orange tab on the left side.
And it says pedal sounds?
Pedal sounds, correct.
Oh, okay, thank
That
you.
one's black. Yeah, the auto bass ones are orange, and then the pedal sounds, I believe, might be a black.
I think that's black.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Gary, what do you got? You going to cause trouble here too?
No, we're good.
Just
Hi
kidding.
guys, how you doing? Hey,
Good.
I bet kind of the first section again goes back to, but the drums also provide the beat as well as the bass, correct?
Yes, you're correct.
Are they complementary? I guess have to be.
Well, the drummer is pretty strict. You know, they're keeping a solid beat. An
Yeah.
auto bass, depending on which auto bass you have on, can do what we call walking bass. So that could have bass notes being played in between beats, maybe eighth notes in a walking bass. Like you saw me, I did more pedals when I was playing than just necessarily one on every beat.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead, Helen. Go to Helen here.
Joanie, I have a Sterling. How would you change the bass settings for sound on the Sterling?
You're going to have a tab. It's orange on the left-hand side, and it's going to say Pedal Genius. And you turn on Pedal Genius, and when you do that, it's going to come on the screen and tell you what the sound is.
Okay.
And then you scroll till you get to the sound you want, and then push Feature Clear, get out of the screen, and now it's in your automatic bass.
Okay, thank you.
And just to answer the other gentleman, Gary's question, the disadvantage of the drums, not a disadvantage, but what the drums do is, you know, those sounds stay the same all the time. The bass sounds can change. Only the timpani in the percussion can change, but in a bass, we can have any sound we want. That's just a sidebar for Gary.
Okay, go ahead, Jeannie.
We can have Starbucks later.
This is for clarification. Am I to understand that the only way you can change a bass sound is if you have pedals?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm an easy 4, so I can't control any of that with my.
No, you cannot change your bass sounds because all of your bass is built in. So it's what it is, and you don't have an option for that.
So it's just the volume of the bass I can control.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. All right, Millie, you got one more question? It should ask you to
Yeah, I do. Going back briefly to putting the functions on the pedals, can you put 2 different functions simultaneously on the pedals, or just one?
You can, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. You can put a function on the long pedals, or what we call pedal natural, and you can put a different function on the short pedal, or what's called pedal black. So why don't we put the functions up right now, if you would, Sean, and let's talk about this. A lot of people, and this is written out in a lot of manuals, but I will tell you something interesting. These functions are not written in every single model. Don't ask me why. I didn't write them. I didn't write the owner's manuals, but Sean's going to be putting up here a page from one of the manuals where it is spelled out. And there are, as soon as you see the page, control functions, I don't know, I'm not a techie, so if you're like me, you look at it and go, I don't know what any of that means, so it really doesn't matter. Well, it really does matter, because the amount of things it can do for you is just amazing. There's 21 functions on the upper end instruments, 18 just before you get to the upper end, and then 21 functions it can do. So for instance, let's say you have a model who can do this, and you're just not good at minor chords. It was never your thing. You never liked to figure out the second note you had to play. Well, we're going to talk about how to get the minor chord where you step on a pedal and it makes the chord minor for you. You don't even have to do it yourself. But I'm going to give you some examples now. I'm not going to go through the list the way it's laid out right now. But this is one of these things. If you don't know about this, I would be remiss not to tell you, please either get a Zoom appointment with your PA personally, or get a help session if you're able to go into a location of Fletcher Music Centers. Get on the telephone and talk about it. This is something that is sadly ignored, of what functions can be done, just because people don't understand it, and or they're afraid of it, or they don't think it can really help them. And trust me when I tell you, it can help you. Here's a little example before I start showing you things. If I put the function of intro ending on the pedal, when I finish the song or arrangement I'm playing, if I touch the pedal, the ending's automatically going to go off for me. I don't have to raise my hand and touch the button. I don't have. What the functions do on the pedals is it eliminates you having to touch buttons, which is exactly what we want, and we want it in the easiest form as possible. So remember, the benefit of not having pedals is you have built in. The benefit of not having pedals is it will be perfect, and you are restricted in that you cannot change that. The benefit of having pedals for you is extremely valuable, because it can do so much. And if you're having a weakness in a certain area, these functions that we're going to talk about can fix that weakness without you ever having to fix it yourself. So I'm just going to give you a couple examples. First of all, I do want to describe, and we're going to gear the camera a little bit here, I do want to describe how to do this. So I'm going to go to feature clear, the feature pages, and I'm going to go to page 9. You just scroll till you get to page 9 on most instruments, and it's at the bottom. It's going to say pedal natural black. I don't know if Joe, you can zoom in on that or not. And I'm going to go ahead and put on, it says intro ending 1 now. I'm going to scroll so that it puts on the glide for me. So there's my glide sustain on the pedal natural. Underneath it says pedal controllers. You have to make sure your pedal controllers is marked on, and you also have to be sure that your pedals off button is not off, otherwise it won't work. So now I'm going to go to a big band category, for instance, and I'm going to hit my sound. Let's see if you can do my feet. So you see, by touching a long pedal, and you might have seen my foot and leg move, but that's because I'm so aware of playing pedals that I have to play the right one. But in your case, you don't have to do that. You could just touch any long pedal, and it made the glide for me. So that made it become authentic to that nature of music. Let me show you another one. This time I'm going to go back to my feature clear, and I'm going to go to pedal natural black again. And this time I'm going to put the fill on the pedal natural. And I'm going to use, let's see, we'll use the train. And every time I want the fill now, because the fill's going to give me the train. So every time I want to hear the train, I would have to be kicking that switch inside, which is for most people kind of awkward and not simple. This time, all I do is step on any long pedal, and it's going to give me my fill. And I'm going to know it's giving me my fill because my fill button, or my FX, if yours is labeled that, is going to light up until I let go of the pedal, and then it will stop. Here we go. What happened to my volume? My foot is on the pedal. So, let me just pause a moment and see if there's a question before I go on.
Go ahead, Helen.
Hi, Helen. You have to unmute yourself, honey.
Yes. can you put one function on the long pedal and a different one on the short pedal?
That is correct. It's going to be when you go into your feature and pedal natural black, the screen's going to come up and say pedal natural as a box. And over here, it's going to say pedal black. And you can put a different function on each one.
Oh, good. Thank you.
The only assignment you need to keep in mind there is you got to remember who you put where.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
Now,
Jan?
those of you who are curious, I'm talking about pedals because I want you to be aware of bass and how important the bass is. And especially if you have bass 1 and bass 2, one bass is busier than the other bass. And that makes a big difference if you just want to change auto bass 1 to auto bass 2. Your music's going to sound totally different because it's a different bass pattern with you not touching the pedals at all. So that's kind of why I wanted to point that out. But I will just say for another workshop, not only can we assign the bass pedals with different functions, we can also assign touch bars with those functions, and we can assign foot switches. The most popular is the pedals because you put your foot down, you step on it, and the job is done. But there's other places the functions can be. Go ahead, please.
Jan?
Yeah, Joanie, when you do that on the pedals natural and black, I've used it before, but it seems like if I change the sounds, it goes away. Is there some way to lock it in so it stays put?
And in your locks, you have a lock button called control lock. Well, these are functions that are controlled. And so when you want to lock it in, you have to turn your control lock on. Okay. And a lot of people turn their control lock on when they don't even have any controls on, just because they think I've been around the country, you know, helping people, and they just thought, well, I guess I always have to have that control lock on. No, you really don't. You need the control lock on when you've assigned a function to a certain place and you want to keep it there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, like I said, just as simple as if you never want to have to reach up and touch your ending button, you can make the control on the pedal be the ending. So whenever you want the ending to activate, you step on the pedal and the ending will activate and you will never have had to touch a button. This is such a valuable thing, and 21 things actually that these instruments will do for us. And the only reason you won't use them is if you don't understand it. So I could do a whole complete workshop on explaining the 21 functions that it does, and maybe at some point we will cover that as well, because it's just great. It's great. I've had people who did not have 5 fingers, and so they had assisting things on the pedals to help them with their left hand chord. I've had people who like to speed up the rhythm and they didn't want to scroll the tempo button, so we have tap tempo we can put on. There's just endless opportunities for the instrument to work for you, and that's where my passion comes in. I want the instrument to work as hard as it can work for you to sound great and you to have to do very, very little.
Paulette, you can go ahead. Got a question? You're kind of quiet. Can't really hear you. Might need to get closer to your microphone there.
You have a lot of pedals, and so you can assign something to each one of those pedals. And then what's the trick? Or I guess you just have to just write it down until you memorize it. And when you turn your computer off and back on, would they still be there if you put the lock on?
No.
I couldn't hear the question, Sean. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you were kind of quiet still, but I think I got the gist of it. You wanted to know if you put those functions in the pedals, lock it, and then reset it, does it still hold it?
Yes.
Yeah, no, it'll lock it while the instrument's on, but if you turn it off, it will go away.
That's correct.
Okay. And my next question, or my first question was, I guess you can assign different functions to every single pedal?
Can you assign a different function to every single pedal, Joanie?
No, you cannot.
Okay,
It's either a function on the long pedal or a function on the short pedal.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, we got several more questions. I think that's a good thing. So let's go to Inez. You can unmute yourself there. You're still muted there.
She
but go ahead.
answered, can you hear me? Okay,
Yep.
she answered part of my questions. When you turn the organ off, everything goes back to the way it was.
Yes, that's
But
correct.
now, okay, I just discovered the locks button and it came up and it says control, so I turned that on. But now
Correct.
there's 3 others and they're off. Should they be on?
No,
Okay.
only if you want something else locked, like harmony or tempo or whatever your accompaniment is one of yours. But no, control is only for the functions that you put down there.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, Al, your turn. You can unmute yourself.
On the pedals, if you have your pedals divided, when you assign a control to the pedals, it goes to the right side. Is that correct?
Good question.
I thought it went to the left side, but I'm not sure, and I wouldn't say without checking.
I think it goes to the right, and that way you can still play your pedals on the left side.
I know that
Yeah.
when we put functions on pedals on, for instance, the Stardust, you only have about 5 pedals on the upper octave on the right that will accept those functions. On the other instruments in newer generations of instruments, it's on the entire keyboard. But as to it being split, I'm not really sure, Al. Good question.
Yeah,
Okay.
that actually, the answer to that, it depends on where your splits are set on your menu. If you go to, there's another feature menu option called Set Splits. And you can also split where the pedals will do functions or the bass. So you can change that if you want. So you can make it so all the pedals will do this function, or you can make it so you still have some on the left side if you want to play the bass.
Right. And that I understand. I just don't know if it defaults automatically to the left or to the right.
Yeah, it should go to the right default, yeah, the
Okay.
functions. So.
Okay.
All right, Sharon, go ahead.
Yes. I've got a Rialto, and it's got pedal magic on it. Are all these functions?
Who's talking? I said Sharon. Was this Ken?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
I've got a Rialto, and it's got pedal magic on it. So are all these functions in pedal magic? Do I just go into pedal magic and do these? I've been able to assign the glide to the long pedals.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize you could assign.
Pedal Magic has a different function.
Oh.
Well, you can do that
That's
with.
for actually playing the bass pedals themselves.
Well, you can do that with Pedal Magic as well. It's just a different way to do that. It's usually a little bit easier because you can just assign it to all the pedals. What Joanie's talking about is in the feature menu, you can actually take and do it to the long ones and the short ones.
Correct.
2 different functions. So
Yeah,
that's
I
a
didn't
little
know
bit
you could
different.
do that.
And good questions. I appreciate that very much. Like I said, this is a hot topic. If you don't know about it, you know, we are all willing to do Zoom appointments with you if you're not nearby in a location. This is something you really, really, really need to know about because it's going to be a great help to you. I'm going to turn it to Sean in a minute, but what I want to say to you is investigate. Ask the questions, call us on the phone, whatever you need to do, and let us help you because it's going to break through to a new height of you enjoying your hobby. The second thing I want to tell you is don't get off of the Zoom yet because Sean has some very important things to tell you about for next week. Next week, the whole normal schedule that you're accustomed to is changing. And if you get off of Zoom, you won't be aware of that, even though you are getting emails and things. You probably want to hear it for yourself live and listen to him, and then I'll come back and play you one more number. So thanks you very much. I hope you got something out of it, and I'd love to answer any of your questions. Give me a ring at any time.
Yeah, we do have 2 more questions I want to get before we wrap up.
Okay.
I want to just get to Sharon first and then Claire, and we'll wrap up right after that here. Go ahead, Sharon.
Yes, I was wondering if you memorize the song with the pedal, you know, with putting your functions on the pedal, will they stay?
If the control lock is on.
Yep, it'll stay there if you say that.
When you memorize, the control lock has to be on as well. So you memorize that.
Okay. All right.
Okay, and then Claire, go ahead, Claire.
I was trying to unmute it on the other button. I wanted to know if you, you said that everything shuts off when you turn your organ off. Can you assign anything and put it into my settings, and will it stay there?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question.
That is a good question. There's actually a couple of options you can do. My settings would be one of them. And I just thought of the other one and now it flew out of my head. There's another way. I'm trying to think. Oh, I'm wondering, not positive, but I will check it out after this. If we can assign that lock to one of the custom buttons. Possibility, not positive, but yes, you can put it in my settings.
Okay, thanks.
Anything that you set up on your instrument, and when you go to my settings and you touch set and whatever number 1, anything that was on the instrument is now in my settings. Correct.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
All right, so let's do this here. Don't go away. She's got a great finale planned for you. I just want to go over a couple things, some important announcements. As she said, yes, next week we have none of our regular events. We're not doing our regular weekly class Wednesday, Thursday. So don't look for that. We're doing something else. Okay, so let me share the screen here. Everything else we're just pushing back to the following week. But let me show you this. Hopefully this is the right thing I got up there. You should see in the center there, it says Recreational Music Making Celebration. I don't know why I made my voice sound like that. I thought it would be fun. It's featuring special guest artist Joe Fontesha, who is a multi-talented guy. He is even a professional cameraman helping Joanie today. Behind the scenes. So if you liked his camera work, you're going to like his organ work. So he's going to be doing a musical journey from past to present. So we got several different things going on. It's going to be 2 full days of events. And you've gotten this in your email yesterday, so you can go back and look. But we're giving away some prizes. And on the last page of the announcement here, you'll see a schedule. And keep in mind, look at the top, it says schedule events all times Eastern. So make sure you know that all the times on there are going to be Eastern time there. So if you are in Arizona, just like I am, that 1 p.m., hopefully you know that that is 10 a.m. for us out here. So,
and you know, Sean, I just wanted to make a comment there on the
Sure.
workshops, because there's 3 names each day on the workshops.
Mhm.
And I had to clarify that myself. There will be 3 different links for 3 different workshops all going at the same time, and you get to choose the one you want to attend.
exactly. So it'll start with a welcome. We'll have John Riley, our company owner, talking to you, giving some history of recreational music making, and then Joe will do a concert. We're going to have, we'll talk about some celebration and giveaway rules that we're going to do. The workshops toward the end, if you see at 4 p.m. that first day, it says Joe, Carrie, and myself. Those are 3 different workshops, like she said, and we are going to split them up. We'll do kind of smaller sized instruments for one, intermediate sized instruments for the other, and the higher end, more touch screen based will be the other. So we'll give you the links on that so you will not be lost. But otherwise, I just wanted to make sure you know to take those 2 days off of retirement, call out of retirement those days, and come into the Zoom. See us here at Zoom, and that's, what is it, the 13th and 14th next week. So I think that's all I got to announce for now, and I'm going to give it back to Joanie. She's going to do a finale tune for you. So thanks for attending today, and here's Joanie.
Thank you, Sean. So we're going to want to come down. No, camera. Camera.
She's directing her cameraman, professional Joe Fontesha there.
Good job. Wonderful.
Awesome. Great, Joanie.
Thank you.
Great workshop.
Jody, great. Good job.
Very good.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Call us.
Base
Call
believer.
us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jerry,
Thank you very much.
Jerry, this is Jerome. Call me.
Thank you.
Also, Joanie, you have to end the session, by the way,
Sure.
just so you know.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for
I
your
can't.
help.
Bye-bye.
Bye.